All right, hello everyone. I'm Paul from Changescape Web, and today I'm joined by Ken from Changescape Web and Jeff Steck from Telerica Marketing Systems. I'm never sure how to pronounce that.
Yeah, no, you're good. It's my kids'
Yeah.
names, Tyler and Erica. Tyler, Erica.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and Ian is couldn't be with us today, but he has recorded his answers for us. So we're going to talk about some quick SEO wins, and if you're a business that's just starting out, or maybe you've been in business for a while and haven't really done much from an SEO perspective, these are things that can help you get started. I'm not saying this is all you need to do, but it is a good starting point. So let's get started. Ken, we've talked about internal links in the past, but how do they, explain what they are? I think it's pretty obvious, but how do they help with SEO, and how do you get started with them? And what are some things to keep in mind about what you should or should not do?
Yeah. So I think this is really a hidden gem that is really easy for almost any business to do. Obviously, you need to think about it from a design and a hierarchy perspective, because that's ultimately what you're trying to tell Google when you're linking content within your own website. So, and that's what internal links are, is it's linking, from one page to the next where it makes logical sense. You do that through what's called anchor text. Anchor text can also go to external links as well. But in this case, when you go to an internal link, using anchor text, which would be a good relevant keyword phrase that links out to the article or the page that you're linking to, just reinforces, as Google crawls your website, hey, this is kind of the logical navigation of this website. Here are a couple of topics that are kind of strung together that are important. And it just provides that interconnectedness that's super important. You can also have a benefit of, actually having some of the SEO pass through these internally linked pages to maybe a more important page. So that's something that again, that may be a little bit more complex for some people if they aren't really steeped in SEO. But that's definitely kind of the thinking of what you need to be operating under when you're doing internal linking. Like I said, it helps the search engines crawl and navigate the site, and it provides. I'm not going to use. I guess I'll use the word social proof, even though it's not really. It's social proof to the search engines, is what it is. That when you built the website, you built it by design. You built it with purpose, and you're guiding the user, which Google want. It's SEO has become about a user experience. And so the more that you can help Google and the user understand how to flow through and get the right information they're looking for off of your website, it's a really powerful thing. The other thing that internal linking does, which I think is golden, is that it keeps people on your site, and it keeps, so time on site, which is an SEO factor, um, you know, is improved because people are clicking from one page or one blog post to the next. And so um, it's a simple thing to do. It's almost always overlooked by small businesses, and it has really powerful results. So I do agree that this is a quick win opportunity.
And a couple things I'd add to that is that when you're thinking about your anchor text, a lot of times you may not want to use the exact keyword, but something semantically related.
Right.
And I think you alluded to this, but you didn't outright say it, that you can't just randomly link. It has to be related. I think you did say that. But you can't just say, oh, I'm going to link from this to this for absolutely no logical reason whatsoever. Don't do that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to, if you're really trying to build um, hierarchical authority of a concept that is important for your website to rank, internal linking is important. And like you said, Paul, it shouldn't be bogus. It shouldn't be artificial. You're just cutting off your nose to spite your face if you're doing crap like that. And Google's really smart at sniffing out stuff like that.
Yeah, and
And
that really goes back to when you're writing your content, you have to keep in mind, okay, how can I write this content in a way that it makes sense to naturally link to another page or blog post on my website?
Yeah, I mean, this is why we talk about, and I don't know if we're going to talk about it a lot today, but in the past, we've talked about this concept of hub page, pillar page, skyscraper page, goes by a lot of different names. But these are pages that are designed to capture the juice of all of the subordinate linked to pages through a hierarchical structure that you create. And it's all about internally linking to a lot of content within your website or to authority external pieces of content. But the internal linking is really, I think, the driver that makes that thing go.
yeah, absolutely. I think, Ken, I wanted to jump in. You used the experience word, and that's absolutely correct. The better experience that users have navigating your site, moving from page to page, the more time they're on the site. Google pays attention to how many pages they visit, how long they spend on them. But the other parts of the WEAT, the expertise, authority, and trust, also can come from your linking, right? You're linking from page to page, from topic to topic. And again, to Paul's point, it's got to flow naturally. You can't just stuff a keyword out in the middle of the page and expect it to, have a magic result. But when you have that natural flow of things that relate to each other, you're giving Google hints about it. You're also building up a body of work. We talk a lot about SEO and good SEO being a body of work over time. It's not a one-trick pony, and you don't want Google to think you've got one page on your site that's a one-trick pony and nothing else matters, because then you're not going to rank high overall. So having that linking going on between pages helps build not only your experience for your visitors, but the overall opinion, if you will, that Google has of your site in terms of expertise, authority, and trust.
Yeah, and by the way, your internal links should be do follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Explain what that is, Paul.
Well, when when you are linking, whether internally or externally, you have the option for it to be a do follow link, which tells search engines, yes, follow this link, and this comes back to page flow and how it distributes the ranking power. And if you're linking out to a domain and externally, you're linking out to let's say you have a domain authority of 30 and you're linking out to a website for authority purposes, and they have a domain authority of 70, they don't need your link. So that should be no follow, because Google doesn't care, because their domain authority is so much higher than yours. So a do follow link tells Google, yes, or any search engine, follow this link and respect and distribute this page authority. And I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of that, but just know that your internal link should be do follow. Now, my next question was for Ian. Jeff, did you said you had some thoughts on this as well?
Yeah.
Did you want to?
Yeah, go ahead and play Ian's clip. I want to jump in afterwards for sure.
All right. So my question for Ian is caching and what it is, why you should do it, and how it helps.
All right, so the question we're looking at is, what about caching? So the first question you must be having, if you're not familiar with it, is what is caching? First of all, you need to understand that it's all about improving speed, and this is a ranking factor with Google. Site speed is also a user experience factor, and that's actually partly why it's a ranking factor, because a slow website has a higher bounce rate. When you, as a visitor, go to a slow website, if it's not loading quickly, your chances of staying on that website are less. And Google understands these statistics. And of course, they want to send people to the very best website that's relevant to their search. And so that's why speed is important. So what caching does is it actually stores a copy of the website on your local device. So you've probably heard of browser cache. You've probably had to empty or delete your browser cache or clear your cache. These are all terms that are used for that, because basically, as you use a website or search a bunch of websites, your cache continues, the size of your cache in megabytes continues to grow and grow and grow. So that's why you have to clear. But how this is important from an SEO standpoint is that when a website is cached on somebody's computer, it actually speeds it up. Meaning, if they visited a web page, they go to the next page on that website, they come back to the home page, because the home page has already been visited, it will load faster. And there's also, depending on your settings of your browser, it can actually do pre-cache, which means all subsequent pages on that site will load faster as well. So it's very important from a user experience. Now, if you have a website and you use WordPress, you can actually use a plugin that basically caches your website and optimizes the caching of your website so that it will load faster when people visit it. It can do a host of different things, from image compression to different ways of caching the site. There's all sorts of different elements to it. But the bottom line is, if you don't use this, your website will be slower and you'll get more bounces. It will affect your SEO ranking, and thus people will not see your website as much. If it's not a WordPress website, there's other ways of doing cache. A lot of website builders have cache built in. And then there's also something called, it's the next layer up, which is called a content delivery network, or a CDN for short. And what this does is it actually caches your website on a high-speed server in multiple locations around the world. And so it basically brings the information of your website closer to the people who are searching for your website. So it can dramatically speed up your website. And this provides faster loading, and it will help your rankings as well. So that's what caching is. Very important. Highly recommend it, and you should look into it for your website for sure.
Yeah, so the part I wanted to jump in on, I think Ian did a good job of explaining it at the high level user experience side and the browser caching notion. The computer engineer in me, my career 1.0 days where I was a computer engineer, so I can't help but jump in. I don't want to get too technical, but there's multiple levels. Ian talked about the browser caching level, which is, when you're running your session on your computer, and even if you jump to another computer, you jump from your laptop to your desktop, the caching, well, some settings in the browser will transfer. The caching, I don't believe, does. But what it's doing is making a copy of the web page so that when you come back to it, boom, it loads fast. That can also cause problems if it's something that shouldn't have a copy. So you have the opportunity, when you do these caching headers, I think Ian mentioned, to specify which web pages should be cached and which shouldn't. Think of an e-commerce page. You probably don't want that cached. You might change the price. You don't want your site visitor to have last week's price. So it gets technical fast. And, my advice, at least, I think I can speak for the rest of you, but jump in, is, you really got to know what you're doing, and you've got to get somebody involved that understands that. And browser caching is only the tip of the iceberg. The CDN, content delivery network, that Ian mentioned, that's a copy of your website that's distributed around the web. And I think that's going to be increasing as we move toward Web 3.0, because Web 3.0 is all about speed by pushing things out to the edges. So you're going to have more and more copies. And the reason for doing that is, if you're a business in the UK and your customers in Singapore, you don't want them to have to take the time to communicate with a server in the UK. You want them to communicate with the server in Singapore. So that's where the CDNs come in. And there's also server-side caching. So where your website is actually running, the computer it's on, it's getting hammered with a lot of traffic coming in. And to save its resources, it will build copies of your pages in cache. These things get really technical. They all interplay with each other. And if you don't make the settings correctly, you can actually wind up breaking things. So you've got to be a little careful. It's very important to look at and consider the site speed and how to improve that, both from a user experience and from Google scoring. But you've really got to be careful about what you're doing, or you can create more problems than not. So think about it, but probably get somebody who understands it to help you out with it, would be my advice.
So Jeff, based on the server caching that you talked about, that to me just screams that the quality of your hosting platform is critically important. So many
Absolutely.
small businesses cut corners. They think, oh, cool, I can get hosting for $3 a month or whatever. Well, you know what? You're paying for that in so many ways that you don't even know. It's like building your house on quicksand. Um, you don't want to do that. Your website is your online house, so to speak. You
Hmm.
want to make sure it has the best possible foundation so that it can weather whatever is going to be happening on the web. And so don't cut corners with cheap hosting. You're going to pay for it because of slow load speeds. You're going to pay for it because of technical support issues. Just don't cut that corner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the fundamentally, if you think about it, a server costs X dollars, and it's the same for a cheap budget hosting company as it is for a big reputable company. So how does the cheap budget hosting company offer $3 hosting? They do it by packing 10 times as many people on that server, and that's just not good for anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of factors that come into play, and the caching helps improve things, but it's important to look at. But it's just one thing, and it's got to be done carefully.
Yeah, just to clarify something a little bit that you both have mentioned, that browser caching is local to your device. Okay?
Yeah.
And I've seen this. It doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen that you can go to the same page on the same website and have a different page cache than someone else.
Yep.
Because if it's a browser caching issue, a server caching issue, like you mentioned, if you have cheap hosting, and Ken mentioned this, that's out of your control. The hosting provider we are able to go in there and clear that server cache.
Yep.
If you have cheap hosting, you can't do that. And I've seen a lot of issues caused by server caching. And if you don't have the ability to clear that caching, you can't solve that problem. You're
Right.
at the mercy of tech support to go in and do that.
Right. Hey, just pass on a pro tip too to everyone. The browser caching side, if you ever get instructed to, clear your browser cache, that can be a pain in the butt because there's probably a lot of stuff cached you don't want to lose, stuff that's being remembered across a lot of different websites. But on any given page, if you're on the page, you can use, I think it's Control F5 to just force a cache reload of that page only. So if you're ever on the phone with support and they say, "Oh, clear your browser cache," because that's the equivalent of reboot your computer 20 years ago. Clear your browser cache. You don't necessarily need to go in your settings and clear everything. You just need to force that page to reload the cache, and maybe it'll work. And if it doesn't, then you can consider more drastic measures. But yeah, again, a lot of technical moving parts that all have to work together.
Yes, it is Control F5, and it's called a hard refresh. You may hear it referred to in that manner as well.
Cool. It's good to know.
All right, so Jeff, title tags, meta descriptions, we've heard about them. I bet a lot of people have heard about them. But what are they, and what do they have to do with SEO?
Yeah, sure. So title tags are separate from titles on your page. Title tags are what give you the text that's up in the tab of the browser. And then meta descriptions think of them as advertisements for your page. They're little snippets about your page, and it's what's going to show up along with the web page link in the search result. So if you go to a search result page, you're going to see the page title, you're going to see the URL that it goes to, and you're going to see a little bit of text. And think of that little bit of text, like I said, as an advertisement for your page. It's getting people's interest to draw them to the page. You need to set those. If you don't set those, typically they will be set for you as just the first 160 characters of your text on the page, and that's probably not the most enticing. That's where you're just starting to introduce, and the first part of an introductory sentence is not going to be as enticing as some meat out of the middle of a page. So the meta description should be something that you set, and you want to set it to be relevant to your page. You don't want to do something sensational, so-called clickbait. I'll talk about that in a second, but you don't want to do something that's sensational just to get people to click to your page, and then they get to the page and they go, "Oh, this isn't what I thought it is," because that's going to affect your bounce rate. Your bounce rate's going to be high. Your time on page is going to be low, and then Google will take notice of that. So the title tag what's in the browser bar, browser tab indicator up there, meta descriptions, snippet that advertises your page. Very important for SEO. If you don't set them, or if they're set to something that Google doesn't think is relevant, Google may actually overwrite them. And it doesn't happen all the time, maybe as high as a third of the time on average overall. Sometimes it's because Google's just trying to help you out and it's trying to match up search intent with the content on your page. It thinks your page content is probably a good match, but it's not exactly the intent that the searcher had in mind. So maybe Google's trying to help you out and advertise something for you to get a click that isn't exactly the way you wrote it. But the better you can be with writing your title tags and your meta descriptions to be relevant to your page, the less likely that is to happen. Now, you also want to make sure you use your keywords. So if you're trying to rank a page for specific keywords, use them in the title tag, use them in the meta description. And those are indicators that any of the SEO audit tools will tell you about. They'll help you out and guide you there. And then I talked about clickbait a minute ago. Clickbait, those sensational headlines, if you will, that get you, what's that all about? I've got to go click on that. It's not necessarily bad. It's just got to be relevant. So you see a lot of things like, 7 tips for, improving your SEO. All right. So on that page, you better have 7 tips for improving your SEO. Just don't advertise it in the title or in the meta description. People click over there and it's like, my 7 tips are buy our stuff, buy our stuff, buy our, that's no. You got to use them appropriately, use the titles in the text that are enticing people, getting them to click, use them appropriately. So focus key phrases, I talked about that. You can put a call to action if you're offering free estimates. If you're a home services company and you're offering free estimates, it's okay to put in your description free estimates. If you're running a sale and you're giving a discount, it's okay to put that in there. But again, think of it as making it relevant to the user who is searching for a specific term that you're trying to rank for. So your keywords are in there, and then any offer relevant is in there to help you click for it. That's okay to do, and is actually good practice because you want, marketing. I tell people it's about connecting with your ideal clients and messaging that resonates with them. But then the third part is getting them to take an action. If you're not getting them to take an action, you're just telling stories. So always keep the calls to action in mind. And yeah, it is okay to include them in the stuff they're going to see before they even get to the page. But again, make sure everything matches up, the content, the keywords you're searching for, and what you're, trying to accomplish with that page.
Yeah, so this really falls under the umbrella of what's typically referred to as on-page SEO. So this is a couple of the key components of on-page SEO. So when a lot of people, when a lot of small businesses are hiring for SEO services, if it's on the cheap end, this is probably all you're getting. And it can be a nice quick win, but keep in mind it's all you're getting. SEO is multidimensional, and to do it best, especially if you're in a somewhat of a competitive market. If you're in a town that has 30,000 people and you're one of 10 or one of 5 people who do what you do, you're probably okay, right? I mean, you don't really need to win in SEO, and you don't need to spend a lot of money there unless you're trying to serve a bigger geographic area. So if you're that's not going to work if you're in a suburban area and you're trying to cover, several areas. But just keep in mind that that's what people that's the first level of SEO that you almost always get when you hire somebody, especially on the cheap end of it.
Yeah. One other thing I should have mentioned is that the title tags, meta descriptions should not be duplicated across your website. That is one of the reasons where Google will rewrite them, is if it sees duplicates. And again, the SEO audit tools will tell you that. They'll tell you if the title tag's too long, that's a reason that Google might override it. A novel isn't going to show up in the browser bar. Matter of fact, you'll even see less than is actually there unless you hover over it with a mouse. But I think 160 characters is the limit. The meta description, or actually for the title tag, I think it's even less. I think the meta description, 160 characters. So you want to make sure they're the right length. You want to make sure they're not duplicated. You want to make sure they're relevant to your content. And that takes a little work. And as Ken said, the bargain basement SEO that just does on site may address those, but they may not even address them as well as you want, because they do need to be tailored for the specific pages.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to use a grading tool that lights up all green, and and you think you're good, but that doesn't mean that you really have solved the SEO problem. So just
Right.
don't rely on that score. Also, a couple things too. Yeah, the title is 65 characters, is really kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah.
I think in general, it's best practice to try to get your focus keyword, phrase, or concept at the beginning of
Early
that.
on, yep.
Yeah, don't put it, in characters 50 through 65.
Yeah,
You're
that's one
losing.
reason why writing the meta description yourself and not relying on the first text of the page, because the first text of the page, your keyword may be in there, but it may be, halfway through the sentence or at the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
When you naturally talk, you don't just jump right in with your keyword as the first thing you say. So when you rewrite the meta descriptions or the titles yourself, you can do that because it's serving a different purpose and it makes more sense.
Yeah. I think from a credibility perspective of your website too, doing these two pieces of, making sure that you spend time and consideration to do this is important, because when a search engine crawls your website, if it sees that you haven't done it, it's going to think, what the hell else haven't you not done? Do you really even care about SEO, or are you just slapping content out there? I don't think you want to give the search engines any reason to doubt whatsoever the quality of what's on your website. And this is low hanging fruit. And it needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, that's why we put it in the SEO quick wins. It's the kind of thing that you can do an audit, you can go through it, you can relatively quickly take care of it for your entire site. And then as you add content, which you should be doing for good long-term SEO, then you just make it automatic. You just have part of the process of generating a unique title tag that makes sense, generating a unique meta description that makes sense. And then from that point on, it's done, it's taken care of. It's a quick win.
Yeah.
And going back a little bit, I like your comment about clickbait, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. Clickbait isn't inherently good or bad. It's how you use it that makes it good or bad. So yeah, if you're using clickbait and it's taking them to relevant content, then there's nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
So Ken, featured snippets are not exactly new, but they can definitely help. But what are they exactly? There's different types, and how can you optimize for them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm not sure that this qualifies in my mind as a quick win, because it's not. I mean, it takes a lot of planning and research to be able to make this happen. But having said that, these snippets, we call them position zero, because they actually show up before the organic search results. And it's a really fantastic place to be at if you can get there. It takes up more real estate on the search engine results page. And honestly, if the search engine, like in this case Google, in my mind, if it shows your snippet, I mean, that adds a lot of legitimacy and credibility to the content that you've provided. So, and then last but not least, I mean, there are a pretty decent number of searches that have snippets in the results. So it's definitely something you want to think about and plan for and work toward if ranking is important for you. So there are really 4 different kinds of snippets. It's going to be based on the nature of the search, and the type of information that's provided back to the search. So there are paragraph snippets, there are list snippets, table snippets, and video snippets. So obviously, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. And I mean, if it's easier to provide a written description, like a definition, that's probably going to come back as a paragraph snippet, right? If you put in what are the top 10 blah blah blah, you're probably going to get a list snippet, or possibly a table snippet. Just depends on what information makes sense to answer the question that the searcher put in with the intent of what they're searching for. So how do you do this? How do you optimize for snippets? I mean, I think it's actually a decent amount of work. This is why I don't think it's a quick win, but I think you can, you need to determine what keywords you want to rank for with these snippets, and then see who is already winning in these snippets and go see what they're doing. What is their response? What is the information that they've provided? You might, everybody's going to have keywords that are more important than others, but there are still very lucrative keywords that have a lot less competition that might be more winnable. So go look for, the most important keywords that relate to your business, find those snippets, understand the structure and what people are doing to answer, that information to be able to position themselves to win that snippet. But then maybe what you want to do is you want to look at another related keyword phrase that has a lot less competition, or keyword difficulty, as we say, and create, and put your snippet effort there and win that. You're not going to get as many searches potentially, but you're still going to win that snippet. And if that's good, lucrative business for you, and I don't know, I'm just making phrases up just to kind of give you an example. If somebody does a search for James Hardy siding, that may be really competitive. If they do a search for fiber cement siding, that might have a lot easier keyword difficulty. So, with less competition. So, and I don't know that that's the case. I mean, I'm just talking off the top of my head to give you an example. That's, then I would put my energy toward the one that was easier to win and try to build that structure first. So taking a winning snippet and the structure and then recreating it, I think, is a really great strategy. There are lots of different ways that you can do it, but it does require a lot of time and effort. You want to do certain things like avoiding first person language. That's not going to help you with your snippet. You need to keep information fact-based and objective. You want to use good written content structures with your H tags, your H1 through H6 tag structure. You need to understand how those work, and you need to write your content that way. And that's why I don't know that this is necessarily a quick win, because, that's when people write content for their website, they write content for their website. They don't write it to rank most of the time, unless they've hired somebody with SEO savvy. Even a lot of bloggers don't get this right. And they say that, they're supposed to be good at SEO. So you want to pay attention to that, using simple sentences. If your language is long and complex paragraphs, that's kind of the antithesis of a snippet, right? So you want to make it simple and clear. Those are just some of the, you want to make sure it has structure to it. Those are some of the things that I think you want to think about. And obviously, as I talked about at the beginning, how is the information going to be best presented back to answer that question? Is it going to be in a paragraph form? Is it going to be in a table or a list, or is a video answer better? I love videos if you can get them there, because when somebody sees a video and it looks like it answers the mail, man, I think that is going to have the strongest click-through rate of any of these, potentially, at least for me, because I much prefer to watch a video to help me understand and solve a problem, if it actually in fact does. And if it wins the snippet, it probably does.
Yeah, the other thing about video that's great is if you have, and they don't need to be long and probably shouldn't be, but if you've got a 30-second video embedded in a player on your page and somebody watches it, now their page time goes up, right? So yeah, there's a lot of benefits. I think going back to the thing you mentioned about position zero, I think that's really important. This is a way to get additional space on the page, like you said, and it's more authoritative. So by structuring things, especially lists, tables, embedding the videos on the page and structuring them, probably a little schema markup can help with that. Google will understand what's a list, what's a table, what's a video, but there's also additional hints you can give it through schema markup. And there's some other kind of sub genres of those, if you will, like FAQs or a type of list, right? You can specifically tag FAQ lists. But anything you can do to get that higher up the page positioning is not only good for getting attention sooner and taking space on the page, but as Google moves towards search generative experience, SGE, that's the kind of thing it's going to be looking for to build its composite response that it shows to people. And eventually they'll be able to get down to you. But the more things you can do on your site to help take advantage of that and get up there now, I think it's only going to help you down the road with SGE as well.
Yeah, I don't know if schema is actually a quick win.
Well,
But
I don't know that snippets is a quick win.
well, it can be, and I was going to talk about that. It can be complicated, but one thing you can do is if you go out, if you do a search for the content you're going to,
So what about,
Sorry.
and Google's returning, say, list snippets, then put a list in your content. Because for some reason, Google's saying for this content, we're going to return, if we're going to return a featured snippet, it's going to be a list snippet. Okay. Don't try to compete with what's already ranking with a table snippet or with a table. Put a list in your content. And that's kind of the angle I was going at with the quick win. Yes, it can get complicated. And depending on the competitiveness of the market you're in and the content you're writing about, yeah, it can be difficult and time consuming. But
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily have to be.
The quick win in my mind is as you're writing content or as you're refreshing old content, which I think is the next question, think about, taking advantage of these really structural forms instead of just a stream of paragraphs with an image here and there, right? Just think of these structural forms that will add value to the understanding of the content, the ability of people to process the content, the ability of Google to understand what you're talking and then push you up a little bit. And just keep it in mind when you're writing and adding things. Mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, you should always break up your content because people tend to skim pages. They don't read them.
Well, the other thing is if you have something that's very obvious, obviously different looking, like a list or a table or a video player, the eye's going to go to it, right? So you're right, Paul. They do skim down through. I don't know. We talk about long form content, and some of the content on blogs is approaching 2,500, 3,500 words, and they're ranking well. But the flip side of that is I don't read very many 2,500, 3,500 word blog articles, but I will skim down through it. I will look at the headings. I'll look at the tables. I'll look at the lists. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, long form content does not mean one paragraph that's 2,500 words.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, and that's why structuring your content with proper header structure, is not only good from an SEO perspective, but for a user experience perspective. Because Jeff, as you said, we all skim content, and it's like if I'm reading a blog post about the top 10 destinations to go on vacation in the fall of 2024, I'm going to skim and it's like, nah, I don't want to go there. Nah, I don't want to go. Oh, wow,
Yeah.
this sounds pretty cool. And now I'm going to drill down and I'm going to read that section. Yep. So it's even though there are a lot of words on the page, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to literally consume every single word on that page. But if you structure it properly, they're going to stay on the page. And there will be parts of that web page where they will read almost, if not exactly word for word.
Yeah. Hey, Ken, you just triggered another thought, and it's maybe a little bit off topic, but it's a good time to throw it in. Absolutely, the structure and taking advantage of all the things you can do to help Google understand the structure. And one of the big ones I see a lot is people who don't use the heading tags properly. They do the same thing as a heading tag can be used for, only they'll make text larger or they're bolder or in a different color, but it's still just paragraph text, and that's not going to help Google understand the structure as well as a heading tag would. Conversely, some people will
SEO part 2.
Some people will use a heading tag for just, I want it bold, I'm going to use the heading tag, and no, that's not helping either. So yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to have multiple H1 tags on any given page.
Yeah, the 10 places to go would be a list snippet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So next question was for Ian.
It is for Ian, not was.
Well, let's not get all semantically correct here. But refreshing old content, it's something that's talked about a lot in the SEO world, and it takes a couple of different forms. So my question to Ian was, why do it? And should you do it, when you should do it, and how should you do it?
So what about refreshing old content? Why bother to do that? First of all, it ensures that your older content is relevant for today. And relevancy is what people are looking for. They're searching for relevant content. And if it's not relevant or if it's outdated, Google will stop sending people to that content. And thus your traffic will fall, your ranking will fall. It's not a good thing. So Google values fresh content. And the reason why Google values fresh content is because people value fresh content. They want to serve the best results possible. It can help also fill content gaps. So what is a content gap? For example, if you cover a specific topic, but there are additional areas of that topic that are related that aren't covered in your existing article, you can build out that article to better cover this expanded topic, which will help you rank better. Again, Google wants authoritative articles and authoritative sources of information. You can also add more content to pages with thin content. So thin content means your word count on a particular page just isn't very high. And so it's not an exhaustive coverage of the topic that people are searching for. And quite frankly, if people come and they find it and it doesn't answer their question, they're just going to bounce off and look elsewhere. And Google can see all that. And so you want to make sure that you cover the topic sufficiently. And so you want to make sure that you build out more of that content. So it's not thin. You can also get rid of old irrelevant content, but make sure you redirect. But you can also refresh your older content. And this is actually a lot easier than creating new content. Google, especially if Google already sends you some traffic to that content, it already sees it as a valuable source. And if you can magnify that source by refreshing it, by adding in some timely and relevant information related to that topic, the algorithm will reward you for that.
He said something, a phrase that is really important, and that is redirect. So I want to make sure we talk about that before we, when you're talking about content refreshing, if you're deleting pages and they had SEO value, you want to do these redirects, and they need to be done properly. And if you're working with a company, a web designer who doesn't understand what a 301 redirect is and the importance of it, if they don't bring it up to you when they're talking about redesigning or pruning old content off of your website, you need to be a little worried. You need to be a lot worried, actually. And if they're going to build a brand new website for you and they're not talking about it, you need to find somebody else.
Ken, I'm glad you jumped on that because I had the same thought. Yeah, the redirects, while it was late in his answer, there's a lot of other things we still want to talk about. Yeah, it's absolutely critical as you're pruning, as you're changing, even changing the URL structure. Sometimes we might recommend changing a URL structure. In other words, the your web domain / whatever, the slug as it's called, of where a page is. Anything that's old and has been out there and somebody might have bookmarked or Google might have indexed, you need to make sure you put in this thing called the 301 redirect. 301 just means it's permanent. So we're permanently telling search engines that this page isn't here anymore. It's now over here, right? And if the page is gone completely, you want to redirect to something that's related to it or relevant. And in the worst case, just redirect to a search page or say, sorry, that page isn't on our website anymore, but here's a search function, let us know what you're looking for and we'll help you find it. Don't just leave it hanging. If you leave it hanging, then you get what's called a 404 error, page not found. And that's very bad from user experience, very bad for SEO.
Yeah. Yeah. And, going back to the hub page structure, that's a really easy way to make sure that you're updating and refreshing content is as you write new pages related to the subjects that, may be a part of the hub page structure, because that's really a cluster of pages. Now you have an interlinking opportunity like we talked about at the very beginning. And that's a simplest way of refreshing content. And it's literally new content. So it's valuable.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, going back to the top of Ian's answer, filling, content gaps, getting rid of irrelevant things. I mean, language changes. Sometimes it's as simple as reviewing a page and changing the language on a little bit. The keyword, I mean, extreme example, Chat GPT wasn't being talked about at all 5 years ago, but artificial intelligence was. So if you were talking about, artificial intelligence and the future and the directions, now maybe you want to go back to that page and add on, a paragraph about Chat GPT and sprinkle that into the mix. So yeah, it's looking at the keywords, not just filling the gaps in content themselves, but also the keywords may change. Language changes over time and how things get talked about and what people use. So that's important. And then just get rid of old, outdated, and relevant. If you talked about an event, I've seen websites that have, blog articles about an upcoming event in 2012. Well, it was relevant in 2012. It's not today. So why is it on the site? Just get rid of it and then maybe redirect that URL to your, current events page or something like that. Yeah, it's something that I would say you need to do periodically. You need to go back and do an old content audit and look at what can we delete, what can we update, what needs to be augmented. And by the way, when you do that, republish it with today's date, right? That's, the URL isn't going to change in a lot of cases, and Google will understand that. But the fact that it's republished with a new date, it will look a little fresher, both to people visiting the site and as Google's crawling that. If you've got dates, like on blog articles, dates published as visible text.
And something, this is a little bit off topic, but Ken had mentioned about if you're working with someone that doesn't understand a redirect or doesn't know what these things are. If you're ever approached by someone that gives you a report that shows, 10,000 errors on your website or whatever, you need to kind of take that with a grain of salt, because a lot of times they may be called critical markup errors or something like that, and there'll be like 500 of them. And usually what I've seen is that's a result of the software they're using not understanding page builders. So it looks at the code the page builder puts in there and says that's incorrect markup. No, it's not.
Yeah, that's a good point, Paul. And a lot of the reports will segment things into errors, warnings, and information. And usually it's those informational ones, especially. It's like, hey, you might want to look at this, but if somebody's just trying to scare you with, you've got 6,000 issues, they call them, on your website, and that's, well, maybe you've got 20 errors and 150 warnings, and whatever the math works out to, 5,000 whatever,
right,
informational items. And you're right. Yeah, it's the structure of the page builders. I guess that brings me to another thought: is don't get too hung up on raw scores. Similarly with page speed, fast enough is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. But same thing with SEO audits, right? There's a lot of information that it's like, hey, you might want to look at this, but it's not critical. And it's a compromise, right? It's this juggling act we play for the sake of getting things done efficiently and with a higher level of abstraction in writing pages, building pages. You're going to make some compromises. That there's going to be some HTML structures that, are they as efficient as they could be? No. Do they need to be more efficient? Probably not, but they're going to show up as a warning, and because they aren't. It kind of, the analogy I used with somebody the other day was, we don't write computer programs in machine level code anymore. We have these layers of abstraction and design kits and development kit. That's, you name the acronym. The point is, it's about getting things done at a cost-effective point quicker, and good enough is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah,
the right things. I mean, the right things too. I mean, you have to have enough wherewithal to know what the right things are.
Exactly.
Looking at those reports, I mean, it's worth looking at them and scanning them and saying, yeah, this is probably a false positive result, that is just because the machine doesn't, or the software didn't understand how this page was built. But look at it, because it's going to find some issues that, we're all human. We're gonna, and websites are dynamic and they change, and and most websites are built with lots of different pieces of software. So there are going to be problems that are going to be found, and that's why SEO is not a set it and forget it thing either.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not saying ignore it. I'm saying that you have to understand the
Right.
data that's being presented.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now we went down that rabbit hole. Thank you. Um, so Jeff, no discussion on SEO really can ignore reviews. So this might be a redundant question, or a dumb question, but why are they so important? And what are some ideas on how to get them? And what do they provide to small business?
Yeah, I think the first part of your question is no discussion on SEO can ignore them is right on. This could be a topic in and of itself. I think has been in the past, right? But to summarize in this session on SEO quick wins, reviews are social proof. It's the voice of the customer. It's third party information. And when we talk about reviews, we typically, or most people instantly think of Google reviews, their Google business profile, formerly Google My Business, but their Google business profile has, that section for reviews. But it's not only Google, right? Facebook has a reviews capability. Yelp, as much as we love to hate it, has a reviews capability. There are typically several that are relevant for any business, but of course, Google is the big one. And it's social proof. It's third-party information. So you want to try and get a slow, steady growth of reviews. Don't go from 0 to 500 because Google will go, oh, well, you paid somebody to write reviews for you. They're not real. But slow, steady review growth is important, especially if you're a local business and you want to show up in that MapsPack listing. We don't know exactly what that point is, and I think it's going to vary depending on how many other businesses you're competing with and what their profile looks like. But generally, I think of, once you get up to about 30, then you're starting to think, of course, if you're the only one that has any reviews, you're going to rank with one. But once you get up to about 30 reviews and show steady continual growth, it's going to help you get in the map pack. So they're important for showing up on that spot on the search results page, but they're also important for social proof. There's a lot of statistics, that people looking at reviews, as many as 2/3 of them will actually give weight to the review and decide to buy from somebody because of the reviews.
Or not buy.
Or not buy. Yeah, one negative review could counteract something like 20 positive reviews. And negative reviews aren't necessarily bad, by the way. A lot of businesses are afraid of getting into reviews and asking for reviews because they might get a negative one. If you get a negative one and you respond to it appropriately, you can turn that negative into a positive. And in fact, I think people would trust businesses even more if they have a 4.5, 4.7, out of 5 rating than 5.0 because they figure nobody's perfect. It can't be 5.0. But that kind of takes me into how to get reviews. And you got to ask for them. You're going to get what you ask for, right? If people are unhappy, they're more likely to post on their own than if they're happy. But if they're happy and you ask for them, then, not everyone, but maybe 5 to 10% of the people you ask will give you a review. And there are some mechanisms you can use to do that, some workflow automation, some tools that help remind people, if you will. But there's one thing you've got to be very careful about, and that's what's called review gating. So in Google's world, they want everyone to have the same experience. And that means don't ask only people are going to give you 5-star reviews, or worse yet, ask people how they would rate you. And if they rate you a 4 or 5, then go, great, could you go over to Google and leave a review? And if they don't rate you, a 4 or 5, then you ignore them. That's called review gating. And if Google figures out you're doing that, they can actually ban you from your Google business profile. And that's really bad. So the way you do that, of course, you can pick and choose who you send it to, but make sure that everyone has the same experience. Remember, Google's all about experience. So think about who you want to ask for reviews. If you're a lawn service and you just finished taking care of somebody's lawn and you're talking to the homeowner out front and they go, wow, this is great. My lawn's never looked better. That's the time you go, hey, I'm glad you feel that way. That's the experience we strive for. Would you mind leaving a review? It really helps me grow my business. So think of the times when people are most likely to ask for a review, but then recognize they may not do it on the spot. So you want to give them a reminder. It could be a physical card. Ken, you've talked about the NFC cards people can tap on and do it on the spot. Maybe that enters them into a reminder funnel where they get an email that night to remind them to do it. Maybe it's a piece of paper, business card size, they stick in their pocket and they go in at the end of the day, they empty their pockets. I go, oh yeah, I said I would do that. So help people help you, right? Give them different mechanisms to get reminders of how to do that. And some of that can be automated, but just plan it out. Plan those interaction times. If you're a house painter, maybe a week after the job's done, you send them an email that's, hey, it's been a week. Just want to make sure everything looks good. If you saw anything after we left that we need to come back and take care of, let me know. And oh, by the way, it would help us if you would leave a review. Make sure you ask, have that plan of when you're going to ask, pick the opportune times, pick the right reminder times, and then take advantage of automation as much as you can to build that slow, steady stream. And finally, when you get reviews, you can feature them right on your website, right? Maybe 2/3, 3/4 of the way down the homepage where we advocate putting trust factors. That's a good place. You might even have a page on your website where you're showing reviews, and you have a mechanism to people can click on a link to leave a review. But again, if you're showing reviews, don't cherry pick. You got to be representative of what people are saying about you overall. If you cherry pick, you can get in trouble with the Federal Trade Commission. But they're powerful. You got to have them. You got to think it through how to get them, and then just do it, to steal somebody else's marketing slogan.
Yeah, I really do think that the automation piece is great, and there are so many tools and platforms and things like that are offering that now. Some of them are well thought out, some of them aren't. The best time to get a review is when a customer is satisfied and happy. Yep. You want to remove as much friction as possible. And that's why we've started to move away from, as much as we can, where it makes sense. And it doesn't always make sense, but move away from sending an email or a text, because people are inundated with those now, because people have realized the power of reviews. Mm-hmm. And, if you can get somebody to leave a review for you right then and there, as you're wrapping up a job, as they finish their meal, if you're a server, say, hey, would you be willing to write us a review? Scan the QR code on our menu, or, do the tap card like we use, with NFC technology. That is the best time. But if that's not working, or if that isn't practical for the natural workflow of your business, automate. Because if you don't ask, the reviews that you get are going to skew to the negative, and that's not representative of your business probably at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, but if that's the case, then you have a whole different problem.
Yeah. And on that point, I was going to say, if you're a business and you don't want to automate the review request process because you're afraid you're going to get a bunch of bad reviews, then maybe you should fix that problem internally.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of other quick points is, when you're asking people for reviews, ask for them to specifically write comments. Just having a click on 5 stars is not very meaningful. And then you can prompt them. Don't say, please write a comment saying blah, blah, blah. You don't want to write it for them, but you want to say, people often mention our customer service attitude, or our, whatever it is, just kind of give them some hints about what you'd like to talk about. Yeah. And then the other point I'd like to make is, while it doesn't help with the online reviews, Google and such, there are some tools we've been experimenting with, one that let you send an email to clients and they record little video clips, and it comes back and it auto builds into a 90-second video. So 3 questions, 3 30-second answers, you get a 90-second video out of it. Now you can post it on social media, you can post it on your website. That's voice of the customer material as well. And that's really cool. Now, you still want to focus on the online reviews, but it's additional review and testimonial material you can gather and use.
Yeah, user-generated content's great because there's instant social proof.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
All right. Well, this was just like a starting point. There's a lot more to it. We're coming up on an hour, so I think this is a good place to wrap up, unless anyone has anything they want to add.
Well, I do have one quick point, and that is showing up on the Google Map results for SEO is huge. We didn't really cover that a whole lot today. Reviews is kind of the closest we got. Everything we talked about in terms of what we recommended to do for website to help your website rank, that's going to potentially feed your ability to show up in the maps results, but it has to be done hand in hand and in coordination with what you're doing with your Google Business Profile. And if you're a local business, that's where 60 to 70% of all clicks or phone calls happen. So we talked today more, I think, about the dimensions of what you do on your website. That's not necessarily all you need to do to make sure that you're showing up in the Google Map result.
Yeah, I wanted to hit another quick win on the similar vein. Offsite things you can do that's still a quick win is backlinks are very important for SEO. Now, backlinking in general is a deeper, more involved topic, but there's some easy, quick win backlinks that you can get. If you're a member of a chamber of commerce, make sure you have a link in their directory back to you. If you're supporting any charitable organizations, anything. If you're a preferred installer for some particular product, make sure from any of the manufacturers' websites that you get listed. Take advantage of any other websites that can give you a link that you possibly can that are relevant to your business.
Member of a professional association.
Yeah, that's another good one. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so I think this is a good place to wrap up. Thanks to our marketing experts for sharing their insights with us. Thanks to our audience for joining us, and hope you found this valuable. And if so, share it with friends, other businesses that could benefit from it. And we will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.